this meeting to order. This meeting of the Board of Chiropractic Examiners Government and Public Relations Committee is being held via teleconference pursuant to the statutory provisions of Government Code Section 11133. The date is Monday, December 4, 2013, and the time is 11 a.m. The board's paramount responsibility is to protect the health, welfare, and safety of the public through licensure, education, engagement, and enforcement in chiropractic care. Members of the public may address the committee during the public comment session. Public comments will also be taken on agenda items at the time the item is heard and prior to the committee taking any actions on said items. Those who would like to provide public comment will be limited to 3 minutes unless at the discretion of the committee, circumstances require a longer period. Members of the public will not be permitted to yield their allotted time to other members of the public to make comments. Individuals may appear before the committee to discuss items not on today's agenda. However, the committee may not discuss or take actions on these items except to decide whether to place the matter on the agenda of a future meeting. Please be aware this meeting is being recorded. Please turn off or silence all cell phones. We will now take roll. Mr. Sweet?
Yes. Ms. Cruz?
Present.
And Raphael Sweet is present.
All right, thank you so much. Let's move on to, a quorum has been established. Let's move on to agenda item number 2, review and possible approval of both June 16, 2023 and September 18, 2023 committee meeting minutes. Are there any questions or comments or changes related to meeting minutes? I did not find any that I wanted. Mr. Sweet?
Nothing for me. I would
Okay.
move to approve the minutes.
Question, would we have to approve the minutes individually or can we approve them together?
Good morning, this is Sabina.
Morning, Sabina.
Good morning. Happy December. You can approve them both together so long as we have the dates in our motion.
Okay.
Okay, I will make a motion to approve the June 16th, 2023 and September 18th, 2023 committee meeting minutes.
I second. All right. Moderator, let's open it up for public comment.
We are now open for public comment on the motion. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users will need to dial *3 to raise a hand. Mobile device users, you have 3 different screens and only one of them has that hand button. Just make sure you're on the correct one. If you are having trouble, we have a Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen where you can type the word comment. We will take comments in the order received. As stated, you'll be given 3 minutes to speak with a 15-second warning. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue with the motion?
Yes, please. All right, let's go ahead and take, let's take roll for the vote.
Yes, Ms. Cruz?
Yes.
And Raphael Sweet is yes.
Great, thank you. All right, let's jump on to agenda item number 3. I will hand it over to Ms. Walker.
Sure, thank you. So I'm going to cover a number of items in my update this morning. The first of which listed on the agenda has to do with the budget and fund condition. I'm actually going to defer that item until we get to agenda item number 4, because that's when we're talking about the budget. So I'm going to start with, as far as we're currently planning for our next board meeting that's going to be on Friday, January 12th, 2024 via teleconference. Notable items for that board meeting is that we're going to be electing the officer positions for 2024. And we're also making arrangements to actually have a number of guest speakers from the chiropractic colleges and the Council on Chiropractic Education to really provide the board with some lectures on their observations of changes that they've seen in the evolution of chiropractic education and also related healthcare professions. So actually should be a pretty interesting board meeting, and it's going to tie in really well with a lot of the work that the licensing committee is doing around the chiropractic college curriculum regulations. Also wanted to highlight some outreach opportunities that we were fortunate to participate in recently. The first of which is in early November, Dr. Adams provided a lecture to folks from the California Chiropractic Association and provided them with some continuing education on ethics and law. And then a few weeks ago on November 17th through the 19th, Dr. Paris and I participated in the California Chiropractic Association's fall conference, where we were able to provide some direct outreach to attendees through a booth that we had sponsored at the event. And then we also participated in a number of roundtable discussions with leaders from Cal Chiro and the chiropractic colleges. There was quite a bit of interest around from the colleges in moving our pending regulations forward that would provide more flexibility on just the regulation of chiropractic colleges, and particularly their schedule and some of the very specific issues that we have in our regulations, potentially modernizing those and moving it forward. And then there was also considerable interest from the profession around the area of animal chiropractic, something that the board really hasn't discussed much. It's really regulated at this point by the Veterinary Medical Board of California. So staff is really putting a lot of effort into researching that issue, and we do plan to provide an update to the board at the January meeting on that, and potentially refer the issue to discussion to one of the policy committees, because that's something that we've, actually in many of our committee meetings, there's been the request to have that discussion, and then it was echoed in those roundtable discussions. So we've noted it, and we're going to do some research and bring that to the board for some potential action in that area. Also going to highlight, I would say probably I'll start with our business modernization project. So if you recall, at the last committee meeting, we had shared the update that the project team that we currently had in place was leaving DCA and for another opportunity. So we've got an updated project team in place now. We actually have the 2 team members that we work with directly from the department's Office of Information Services are now on board. They're great. Tammy and I have met with them a number of times and kind of communicated our priorities for the project. They seem like-minded, so we're in a very good place with that project. We're continuing to see delays, though, in the implementation of that version 4 upgrade that was kind of pitched to us late spring, and now here we're approaching the end of the year and it's not done yet. There's been some movement on developing some of the functionality. It's been released out to testing, but it's still continuing. So where we're at with the position of the project is we're working closely with the DCA team to get the developers going on our continuing education functionality. We had kind of deferred that, hoping to get it onto the latest version, but it's just with the delays, we're going to just go ahead and start building in our current form and have them upgrade that functionality too. So we've got a couple of grooming sessions scheduled with the staff from the team so we can finalize our list of requirements as far as continuing education and really get that built. As the committee may recall, we've shifted our focus on what we were putting as priorities on that project. We're moving away from spending a lot of resources on developing an application process for new CE providers because the volume is just pretty low. And instead, we're really developing a process to where after the board has approved somebody as a continuing education provider, staff can manually enable them the ability to then kind of enter that environment and start being able to apply for CE course applications, be able to approve, be able to apply, be able to add additional dates, renew their courses and things of that nature. But we're not going to put very much resources into the, if you're a new CE provider applying electronically, the PDF process that we have works fine. And it just, from a fiscal standpoint, those efforts could be better utilized on some more back-end features that would benefit not only staff, but also the providers. Namely, we're still working on developing a pretty comprehensive CE course search functionality that we could put on the website to get rid of the PDF document that's currently there. Instead, we want to have a tool where you can actually search courses by, the subject area or the dates, the location, the method of delivery, things to that extent. And then we also figured out a method to where we can have the developers build us functionality where we can retroactively apply CE courses to prior renewal cycles. So if someone, failed a renewal audit and they were cited and, told they had to take certain hours, actually developing that functionality so we can retroactively apply those new credits to the missing CE cycle so that they can't double dip in the future, and we ensure that they're compliant with that. It also opens the door for some discussion that the CE committee has been having around being able to grant extensions in cases of hardship to licensees, because we now have a mechanism to where we can actually track it where we didn't have that before. So really a lot of exciting things to come on the Connect project in 2024, namely just getting our CE functionality on board. There is still, the version upgrade is in the works, but we've put a little bit less focus on that. And some of the other functionality that they've been working on that's kind of stalled a bit, particularly getting all of the cashiering functionality in the system. That still remains under development, but it's not our highest priority. At this point, ours is getting that continuing education functionality online so we can replace our paper process with something more modern and electronic. So before I proceed on that, any questions on the Connect project? I know sometimes there's quite a few questions on that.
So, I appreciate I would say restacking of priorities when it comes to if we're not getting the timelines we're going to need. And so I appreciate that. I believe, what's it called? There was a comment here, and I feel like one of the things I ask each time. So where does the cashiering functionality fit kind of in the set of priorities? Because I know that's been kind of one of the things on the list for a while.
I'd say at this point it's third. The biggest priority for us is really getting that continuing education functionality working.
Mm-hmm.
Annual paper-based process it's difficult to track, and it's also difficult on the provider side. So that's our absolute highest priority. The cashiering functionality, we have a manual process that we use for checks. Ideally, we're trying to get people to just use the system so we can eliminate that process as it is. But they're taking a broad approach for something that works for all of the programs. So while we're still invested in that project,
it's not just us. Okay. No, that's
we're not the ones driving it. So we're okay as far as cashiering. It'd be great to all on one platform, but not necessary really at this point.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Sure.
I don't have anything further. I think the CE function, once we get that up, will be a big help. So hopefully we can get that going. But I'm glad to hear we are making some progress.
Yeah, thank you. Let me see, what else do I want to highlight here? So as we're wrapping up the end of the year, we're in an interesting time for our legislation, because we're working to implement the 2023 legislation. We've talked about that over the past few meetings. We actually have this legislative year was relatively light for us. There's not a lot in terms of implementation that we have to do. One of the bills that's in the meeting materials that we've been watching was SB 143, which was that budget trailer bill that implemented the federal license portability law for service makers or service members. And the department actually took the lead on that and developed an entire platform for people who are coming to California and still plan to practice using their out-of-state license, but be able to register with the state so we can contact them. So they stood up that process. They implemented and released everything last week. I checked as of this morning, one person, not chiropractic, but one individual is already registered through that process. So we're going to monitor that, and as we get the requests, process them appropriately. But for all purposes of having to implement that bill, that work has been complete. The department's also taking the lead on implementing SB 372, which is the bill that requires that we remove certain information from our online portal if in the cases of name and gender changes. So the department, the way they're planning to do that is to add a secondary status code for individuals who qualify for that circumstance. And then they're also developing a portal to where someone can apply and submit their upload their information and submit it directly to the relevant programs. So another bill where we're just supporting the department on that functionality and just monitoring and making sure that we comply with it. The other bill that's going to require implementation is AB 883, which has to do with expediting applications for initial licensure for members of the military who have participated in the Department of Defense Skill Bridge program. That bill has a delayed implementation date of July 1st, 2024. So on the implementation side, we have to do two things. The first of which is update our application to inquire if somebody is part of that program, and then retool our process to where if they are, we expedite their application, and then also follow it up by updating our actual application form to inquire and update the regulation behind it. That regulatory package, what we're planning to do there is develop something to merge that with the prior AB 107 language that we were working on with temporary licensure for military spouses, because it's all under that same realm of military. So we're working on a solution where we could put both of those together and bring it forward for the board for consideration. With the new year as well, we do need to begin work again on some of the bills that didn't make it through in 2023, but the board had concerns with. Namely, we're going to be working again on AB 765, which was the medical specialty title bill that the board opposed and has concerns about, as well as AB 1028, which was the mandated reporting bill that the board opposed. So we're gonna restart efforts on both of those bills now that the legislative session will be getting going again. Let me see here. And then as far as regulations, that's where, as we know, looking at where we've been in 2023, a lot of the board's work has all been centered around regulations. So we're at a point now where we have eight different packages that are at the production phase, which is the point at which we're developing all the documentation and getting it approved so we can release it for, put it out for notice and begin receiving public comments on the bills. And then we've also got, so we have a total of 20. So we have 12 more at the different committee levels that are being discussed and being brought forward. Of particular note, for the January 2024 board meeting, we're looking at some of the pending language that's already been approved by the enforcement committee, seeing if we can finish up the filing and evaluation process for the petitions for reinstatement and bring that forth for the board for consideration. If we don't get it in January, we will definitely have it by April. And then we're also, we've been working with Dr. Daniels to assess some of the prior language that the board had approved on the chiropractic colleges. Particularly, there were certain sections where the board had previously voted to just repeal certain provisions. So we're looking at we're going through those provisions and looking for some of them to where they could be a standalone and we could just proceed with the repeal while we continue developing the broader curriculum requirements. So those potentially could be coming for the board in January. The CE committee just met last Friday. They discussed the basic life support certification regulation that they had been developing. They gave a pretty concrete policy framework back to staff for us to begin developing language so we can bring it back to them for final approval. And they also gave staff approval to repurpose. There was a pending regulatory proposal around creating exemptions for licensees who are involved with, who are subject to a natural disaster or a state of emergency. Staff had proposed broadening that proposal to actually include extensions in lieu of exemptions and be able to include other circumstances and hardships such as medical conditions, whether temporary or permanent. So staff is going to develop a more broad proposal and bring that forward to the CE committee as well. And then this Friday, we have the enforcement committee's meeting. So they're going to continue their policy discussions on the record keeping requirements that they've been developing, disciplinary guidelines, and then the role of unlicensed individuals at chiropractic practices. Each of those have been discussed a few times and they're getting very close on that policy discussion. So we expect to have those proposals wrapped up in 2024. And then we also have licensing committee, which arguably has the highest workload right now of any of our committees. They're continuing, like I said, with the chiropractic college curriculum regulations. In 2024, we're going to need to bring forth that proposal about potentially ordering physical or mental examinations of applicants for consideration. And then they've also continued to develop language around regulating chiropractic practice locations in lieu of a satellite certificate, and then modernizing the display of licenses. They've also on their plate, they have the issue of licensure through reciprocity, where staff is still developing a pretty comprehensive report on that so we can make some decisions in 2024. And then also examining the issue of inactive licenses. So quite a bit of work on the regulation side, particularly still at the committee level. We do have a little bit of a bottleneck now in the production phase that we're working through with staff trying to draft all these packages. So we're trying to get through that by the end of the year. And then when we look forward to 2024, what we're likely going to see is quite a number of packages going out for notice, public comments, a lot of work at the board level, reviewing those public comments, responding so we can implement those regulations. So we started with a significant backlog that was stuck really at the pending concept phase. The board did a lot of work to move a lot of those packages forward over the last year. Now that bottleneck is really at the staff level. So we're working to loosen that up and then smooth things out for 2024. Also within the meeting materials is an update on the strategic plan objectives. Really, a lot of that work has gone into the regulations, staff training, and then developing our outreach plan. So we are looking at really getting more of a presence on social media in 2024, and also working on the updates to our board website. We're doing that in phases. So we've gone through the pages that we do have and identified things that that can be archived or that need to be updated. So a lot of the work right now is developing the new content that we can put on the website, and then later in 2024 is when we can develop the newer template with better graphics and a better visual appeal. But we're going to start first with the actual content that's there, really building out a lot more information that we can have for consumers and licensees. So that concludes my update this morning. Happy to answer any questions on anything that we've got going with the administration program.
A question I have on going back to AB 883, kind of related to Skill Bridge, and then there was another assembly bill that I was related to. You mentioned that, I'm trying to find it here. There was a date of 7/1/2024. That's the implementation date we're working towards, right?
Correct. Yeah, the bill
Okay.
delayed implementation date of July 1st, 2024.
Okay, so my question is related to that date. Since we have that additional kind of assembly bill that we're trying to kind of, I would say, group them together. Is there any, I would say, do we anticipate anything happening to go? I'm trying to find the right words. Do we feel like we have enough time? What's it called, for whatever staff needs to group them? I wasn't sure kind of what the lift is to kind of group them in a certain way, or is it really just organizing the documentation so that they're paired together?
Correct. It's an organization. The challenge that still remains actually with AB 107, which we've implemented but haven't yet completed the regulations to fully, to update the regulation behind. But we have the process in place, and it's we just have to do the regulations. But the challenge that we're still having is actually around the regulation language we have now on the initial license process isn't very clear. So we have clear language on how to get a temporary license, but we have to do some cleanup on the regular Doctor of Chiropractic license. And that same cleanup is going to overlap with AB 883, because all we have to do is add an additional question to the application. So we're going to group it all together so we can move it all at once, try to tackle it separately.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure if things had to be, okay. So that makes more sense. So it's more of the coordination than it is getting things finalized in specific language in an assembly bill for approval. Okay.
Correct. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. That's what I was worried about. And then for the bottleneck of packages, you mentioned, is there, what's the understanding? I feel like there's going to be another, you mentioned in the next wave of things that we're going to be anticipate coming out of the strategic plan. Do we anticipate, kind of an upcoming bottleneck around those items? Because when I think of all the things that we want to put out in terms of our outreach, all the things we want to put out, I'm just kind of anticipating what next year is going to look like.
Next year's going to look a little bit better, and the reason I say that is we are progressively hiring, and we'll see some of that when we get to the budget update as well. But we are working to fill our positions over the coming months. We're starting with enforcement, but just bringing the additional people helps. And really, the biggest challenge has to do with the regulations themselves. It's a pretty specific skill set involved with having to with drafting those documents and being able to put all the background information together to be able to move those packages forward. So that's where it's a very specialized skill that we're struggling with currently, that we need to hire more staff that has that skill set. A lot of the other ideas that around our strategic plan objectives as far as outreach and other opportunities are a lot broader, so we can really tap into all of our staff, to kind of assist and help with those projects. So I'm not anticipating as much challenges around things like the outreach or the updated materials as we're specifically having on the regulations.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
I don't have anything further. Thank you for the update.
And then with this one, and actually with all of the items on today's agenda, I just want to clarify, aside from the minutes, none of these they're all updates, they're not action items. So after the discussion, all we have to do is call for public comment.
All right. Well, is that the full update?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, just making sure. All right, let's go ahead and go out for public comment.
All right, we are open for public comment on agenda item 3. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise a hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue with the agenda?
Yes, please. All right, let's move on to agenda item number 4, review discussion and possible recommendation regarding 2022 to 2026 strategic plan objective 1.4 to continue to monitor the board's license fee structure to ensure the board's financial stability, maintain access to the board services, and determine whether or not the board needs to consider plans for restructuring its fees. All right, Ms. Walker.
Sure, thank you. And if I could ask the moderator to display the fund condition statement on the screen, thank you. And for users, you can scroll through the document and zoom in and zoom out, I believe, using your own independent controls. But for today's update has to do with, just one moment, let me navigate to my notes here. A few different items. So we have the strategic plan objective that is the purpose of having this discussion. It has to do with monitoring that fee structure that we have to ensure the board's financial stability. So I wanted to start with just first reviewing the fund condition as it stands. This is through fiscal month 3, so it's about a month behind, but this is our latest report that we have that we can share today. Looking at the fund condition itself, it's stable, and the reason primarily that it's stable is due to cost savings from our staff vacancies that we still have. So when we look at the statement itself, looking at current budget year, which is 23-24, we have a prior year adjustment of $150,000 to resolve a legal settlement that we had to pay. But then our other revenue coming in is totaling around $4.7 million. And then when you look at our total resources and expenditures, we're spending a little bit over $4 million. So we've got a very comfortable cushion there. The problem is that when you look at our expenditures beginning next fiscal year, that's when we're assuming fully staffed and back to full operations. That number of expenditures jump significantly. So we go from just a little over $4 million to about $5.7 million. And then we've got the 3% growth each year after that. So our 5.78 grows to 5.85, then going to just about $6 million. And what we see with that expenditures is that when we look at our fund balance, although we've got the money for the current year and 2 years out, we are starting to see that diminishing fund condition. How we kind of got here was we had our 2021 fee study that was based on our expenses in 2020 and prior. And what they did was they did an exercise of what it costs for us to provide each of our fee-based services. They did an analysis, and their conclusion was that we were under recovering $1.4 million per year, and we really needed $6 million in annual revenue to be able to not only pay off our outstanding obligations to the Bureau of Automotive Repair, but also be able to rebuild a reserve of 6 months over a 5-year period. One issue with that report that we're seeing is that it really didn't account for any of the elasticity of our fee-based services, particularly the CE course application fees. So although we've implemented that, when we start putting our expense or our revenue projections together for outgoing years, we took a very cautious approach, but we actually are estimating for up to a 50% reduction of what we were experiencing in 2020 as far as course application volume. So that full $1 million that we were expecting to get through the CE course application fee is actually not being realized in our estimates. We're taking a very cautious approach with it because this is the first full year that we've had that fee implemented, but that's one of the major issues that we're seeing when we look at our fund condition. We're stable now, but we are going to need to start looking at that just the overall funding of the board and where those fees are coming from as we start preparing not only for our next sunset review, but we have this report that we have to put together for the legislature and then also for just our fiscal health. That's really reflected when we look at our total revenue numbers. Going years out when we're at 5.4 million, we really need to be closer to 6. And we also need to be rebuilding a reserve. So the reason I bring that up for this board meeting or for this committee meeting is just to bring it to the committee's attention that that staff's intention moving forward with this strategic plan objective item is, in 2020 and through 2021, we had contracted with an outside vendor to do our fee study. There's significant expense associated with that, but also not as much institutional knowledge as if we were to prepare it ourselves. So staff's plan on this is actually to begin working closely with the budget office to put together our own fee-based study of how much time goes into each of our different transaction types, keeping in mind that we now have the Connect system. So a lot of those numbers have changed since 2020. And then also putting together basically the report using the internal resources that we have. So we have an updated 2025 version that we can put into our report to the legislature, and then also begin assessing if there's a need for us to move some fees around. So it's just, for today's discussion, is really just introducing the point that come 2024, especially about middle of next year, we're going to be putting those numbers together, and then we do need to assess whether or not we need to make any changes to our fee schedule. So the fee schedule that we currently have, all of our fee amounts are fixed except for the annual Doctor of Chiropractic license application. It was initially fixed at $336 per year, but we have authority through regulation to raise that fee if necessary to sustain our fund. So we want to start putting some numbers together about spring 2024 so that come summer, we may need to start having a discussion of what that fee amount may need to be for us to sustain ourselves long term and ideally rebuild our reserve. Because even with what was in that 2021 report of wanting to rebuild the reserve over 5 years, that's a long time for us to try to rebuild a reserve. We'd like to come up with something to where we can rebuild it faster in 2 to 3 years and really put us in a good position long term. So just an update on today's, just really sharing the plan with the committee, and then we'll have the same update for the board come January. So I'm happy to answer any questions when it comes to kind of our fund condition and kind of our plans for addressing this strategic plan objective.
Any questions, Mr. Sweet?
Yeah, I have a few. Ms. Walker, you mentioned the CE revenue being down about 50%. Do we see that? Is it going to stay at 50%? I want to clarify that because I think you might have said, but do we see it staying at that 50% number, or do we see it climbing back up towards where we envisioned it back a couple of years ago?
At this point, we've yet to see a full year to see how the marketplace is reacting to the fee, but anecdotally, what we're hearing from providers is that they don't plan to offer as many courses due to that cost. And then we also have the regulatory package out there to extend the approval period by 3 years, which is going to, in its sense, already reduce the revenue because you're only going to collect the fee once every 3 years. So really, I think that 50% figure is probably here to stay.
Okay. And as far as, I mean, it sounds like, do we have the capability or the time to, and the skill set to do the fee analysis ourselves that was previously outsourced?
We do. So DCA's budget office, they've got some real expertise right there in-house that can assist us with that effort. And then our own staff putting in the time of, assessing the procedures and how long it takes to go through a certain process. We do have the expertise in-house, and then there's tools developed specifically by the DCA budget office to assist us in our calculations.
Do we know how much we were previously charged for that study?
I don't have the exact figure off the top of my head, but it was somewhere around $20,000 last time when we did the report.
Okay. All right. I think that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Sweet. For me, it is there's a line item. What is it? Under revenue and transfers, other regulatory licenses and permits. It just stood out to me that the jump from current year to next year from 690 to 981. Wondering what that was.
One moment, I was navigating so I can give you an accurate. So that's the number that includes that's our CE course application fees, as well as our initial application fees. But primarily, that's the revenue increase for our initial license application fees, our initial satellite fees, and the CE course application fees. So we're seeing that increase because of we have the jump for a full year of the new fee amounts, but we're still not hitting quite the number that was initially projected in the fee study.
Okay. Yeah, I was like, that's like, I calculated it was a 42% increase, and I'm like, oh, that is a big assumption in terms of the level of jump, but understanding that it's resulting from a full year of actualizing that. Let's see here. Another question is you mentioned that we're doing okay right now. Just I would say the past bit because of the amount of vacancies we've had. Is the assumption within the numbers of what's it called, full staffing?
Those, yeah. So the full
making sure.
Are assumed beginning next budget year, so 24, 25 and out. That's why we're seeing that significant increase in expenditures of about 1.6 million.
Oh no, that's fine. I wanted to make sure kind of our out years maintain that level of conservative assumption that we are fully staffed. And I think that's all I got for now.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, like I said, just an update item at this point. We are working very closely with the budget office. We've actually recently established monthly meetings where we're going over this, but just really putting it on the committee's radar that come about mid-2024, we're going to have some discussions and some development of our report that's going to have to go to the legislature.
Then actually a question about that. Leading up to those, I would say, more summer conversations, do we anticipate there being something for this committee to review leading up to? Because I imagine if we need it by summer, then that means it would be the board summer meeting, which means that we would kind of have something to look at during the spring.
So, yeah, so come spring, we plan to have some numbers and kind of draft report for the committee to start looking at as we start introducing that discussion of whether there's a need for pursuing a regulatory fee increase. The actual report itself for the legislature, it has a January 1, 2027 due date, but our plan is to align it with our next sunset review report, which should be due in December of 2024 or 2025. I apologize. 2025 or January 2026. So we're actually going to deliver the report about a year early because we're already going to have the spotlight of sunset review.
Okay, thank you.
And that concludes my update. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, sounds good. All right, let's go out for public comment. Or is it public comment or is it on to the next agenda item?
We should take public comment at the end of each one.
Thank you. All right, thank you. Public comment it is.
We are open for public comment on agenda item 5. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial in users dial *3 to raise a hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue with the agenda?
Yes, please. All right, let's move on to agenda item number 5, review discussion possible recommendation regarding 2022 to 2026 strategic plan objective 4.1, increasing efficiency and rulemaking process to move pending regulatory packages forward, prevent a backlog of packages, and improve staff board effectiveness. And Ms. Walker.
Thank you. So this is another one where when the board was developing the strategic plan last year, was looking at ways we could improve over the next 4 years. And one of the topics came up was the regulations packet or the regulations process, just given kind of the backlog that we've experienced and the number of proposals that were at that time stalled really at just a concept development stage. I'm going to provide a brief presentation on what that process looks like so you can see where we've moved some of these to. But with this strategic plan objective, what we're looking for in terms of when we can mark this one as officially complete is we're trying to get to a phase where we have no current packages that are older than 2 years. Because some of the proposals and the ideas out there, we're going to get those implemented through the process. We're still always going to have a pending regulatory workload, but what do we define as healthy? We kind of had come up with a success measure of if any idea that's out there at any phase in the project or in the process is less than 2 years old, we've addressed this objective. If I could ask the moderator to display the overview of the regulation process. So this is a figure that the department developed, and it really just provides a very high level, simple view of what is involved in our regulation process. The thing about this graphic, though, is that the most important phase, especially particularly for committee and board involvement, is the concept phase. So although they look they kind of all have the same type of coloring there, the concept phase is the most crucial. And within that phase, this graphic provides kind of the procedural side of it, where DCA has done a lot of work on really ensuring that all the programs can successfully get through the regulatory process. Because something that was experienced probably in 5 to 10 years ago a lot with the department was issues with packages getting to the end and being disapproved by OAL. So you never want to be in that position. You want to position yourself to where, once you get something out there for public comment, you've assessed it and you go into your filing phase that it's going to be approved by OAL. So they've invested heavily in resources in standing up their new regulations unit within the Office of Legal Affairs. That's where Stephen Vong, our regulatory counsel, comes into play. He really assists us in making sure that we can develop good rulemaking packages that can actually make it through and get through the OAL scrutiny. A lot of that comes down to the concept development stage. So within this process, they talk about having a kickoff meeting with the board and staff to discuss the regulation, and then staff drafts it. We go through the first and second level legal review of the text. Then the board meeting is held, and that text is approved by the board. Well, what goes into that before we even get there is the most crucial part for this board and really realizing a lot of our efficiencies, because with that concept development stage, it really starts with identifying a problem and then developing our proposed solution to that problem with alternatives. One of the challenges that kind of staff has observed with some of our proposals that we've had that have been stagnant for a while is it actually started as a solution, but we were working backwards trying to find the problem. So we really have to make sure that when we're drafting those ideas and that we're running through committee chairs, that we really put the problem first. What is the problem? How is this the best solution? What other alternatives did we consider in being able to come up with that? And that really comes into becomes important for us because we need to be able to meet OAL's level of review. And what OAL is reviewing for, and this is pretty telling, is what they're reviewing for is not only that we have authority and reference to be able to enact a certain rulemaking, they're looking for consistency. So that's an issue that sometimes comes up if you're saying one thing, but the text is actually saying something else. So it has to be consistent. But a lot of it has to do with clarity. The regulations themselves need to be easily understood by those that are directly affected by them. They can't be duplicated, so they can't have the same purpose as a state or federal statute or regulation. I note that because on the enforcement side, prior to the board being part of DCA, they had enacted a number of regulations that are actually pretty much mimic existing statutes. So when we get to Objective 4.2 of kind of cleaning up our regulations, there may be quite a few proposals for us to just repeal certain regulations because they're also in statute and no longer necessary. And then the final prong that we have to be able to meet is the necessity provision. And that's where it goes into the whole idea of a problem with a solution, and we can justify its necessity through our regulation package. The way we demonstrate that necessity really comes down to the committee's discussion and development of the idea and the solution, applying the agency's knowledge and experience, using experts, whether we're citing studies or reports, or we have direct information from stakeholders. So I put so much emphasis on that because that's what we're seeing as kind of our solution going forward for making sure that we're a little bit more effective with our rulemaking, is making sure that we're doing all of that at the concept development stage with staff and then with the committees before we forward them for the board for a final approval. And this current board's been doing a great job of that, because when we reestablished doing the regular committee meetings about a year ago, and we've worked towards that, the committees have been, doing an excellent job as far as giving staff direct feedback on proposals, reasons that we need to make certain changes and why, so that we can draft the language. But we want to make sure that we never kind of go back to a phase where the committee themselves is just writing language or the board's writing language. Instead, discuss the framework, discuss the solution, and then allow kind of us to use our expertise on writing language that reflects that duty. So after we get through the concept phase, which is where we've currently got, we've got 12 proposals, then we get to what's broadly called the production phase, and that's where our current bottleneck is. We have 8 packages that are at the production phase where we're just developing the text, the package, everything, all the documentation that we need so that we can go through and get approval from the department director and agency, so we can go out to notice and to public comment, which is that initial filing phase. So early 2024, about Q1, we expect to get a number of those packages into that initial filing phase where we go out for public comment. We will receive comments, so the board staff will work with council to draft suggested responses to those comments. If someone happens to request a public hearing on the regulation, we'll hold that hearing. If we have to make any changes to the text, we can go through a 15-day public comment period to modify that text. But we'll get through that phase before we can get to the final filing phase, which is what we're looking at in late 2024. The other opportunity for a lot more efficiencies to be gained, and especially as we get more staff on board, has to do around with the production phase. In an ideal situation, as we're going through the concept phase and the board is approving text, we have that production package already pretty much drafted, ready to go, so that when the board approves text, it's just a matter of just double checking it, finalizing it, getting off to regulatory council, because that's where we're struggling right now, is we have text that's approved, but we're still working on that documentation. So those are the 2 key areas that we're seeing where there's a lot more efficiencies to be gained, is, really thoroughly discussing at the concept phase, and then also getting our packages done so that when the board approves text, we can get it right away off to the director and let them start their review. Only other item for me to really comment on with this is as far as the staff recommendations, we think that the structure that we've kind of implemented over the last year works very well. Because in addition to doing, the quarterly committee meetings where the committees are discussing these proposals as they arise, providing feedback, and we move them closer and closer to being ready for the full board review. We also really support and like the idea of how we're doing the committee updates at each of the board meetings, because that also helps counter any potential problems. Because if you have a committee that's working on a specific item, you're still updating the full board, you're still getting feedback on, just the idea and the concept itself. We're getting some board buy-in. And then when it's complete, it's been pretty smooth in getting that text approved at the board level. So that concludes my update this morning. I was just wanted to share some information on what that process looks like. There was some interest from the board at the October meeting, and just kind of share a little bit to help further that strategic plan objective. So happy to answer any questions on this.
I love the layout. I love the detail. Like, you're going to hate me because I know it's on the next topic, but I would love to add this too as part of whatever the item on the next agenda item in terms of the onboarding process, because it's laid out, it's organized so succinctly in terms of, wait, what are we on? I swear we talked about this topic 5 months ago. Where is it? And so, no, this is incredibly helpful, especially if someone's new to the board or trying to understand kind of where in the process this is, because I can absolutely see it becoming normal language among board members of no, still concept phase. We are not near initial filing. So that is not a this year thing, right? And being able to, I would say that more comfortably in terms of understanding where things are. So would love to see that. And even in addition to including, I would say at least the graphic and details along the top. You mentioned some really good key considerations of what we need to keep in mind in terms of what the OAL looks for, and clarity, necessity. I feel like those talking points would be great in terms of, as board members, we really need to consider XYZ as we move things forward.
Yeah, and that's part of what we're there's this graphic which is very helpful, and then we are wanting to include the additional the points I noted that I mentioned about what OAL is reviewing for. We also want to put together a cheat sheet on that for board member reference, because that's helpful as well when you're reviewing any regulatory proposal. If they have that that they can reference, you can almost go through doing your own individual review of are we checking on the, or am I seeing gaps? So we're gonna definitely include all of that in the materials for the board members.
That's great. Thank you.
And then you mentioned, this I think came up because of a perceived backlog of legislation or regulation. But and you mentioned, I think you said there were 8 at the moment that were in the production phase. Is that typical, or what's it? I don't know if that's normal, or if that's a really high number, or what can we expect on that?
I'd say at this point it's a little bit of a high number, and the reason being that we had accumulated 20 that were just kind of pending. When we started this effort, we were looking at 20 in the concept phase at about this time last year. So to have 8 of them in production and 12 in concept, we're in a good place. We want to see those 8 move to initial filing early 2024, and then we start filling in behind that. So we know that 2024 is going to be a busy year for us on the regulation side. What I'd say is a more typical and long-term sustainable number is being in, where you've got about 3 to 4 maximum at each phase of the project or process is a lot more sustainable long-term than having these bottlenecks just due to the high volume.
Okay. That's helpful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And that concludes my update on that item as well. So just wanted to share some information with the committee. We'll bring the same information forward to the board because I know there was interest there at the October meeting. But yeah, just wanted to kind of provide an update on this strategic plan objective.
Perfect. Thank you. And That's it. Let's go ahead and go to public comment.
We are accepting public comment on agenda item 5. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise a hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. As a reminder, there's a Q&A box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen where you can type the word comment and send that comment to all participants. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue?
Yes, please. All right, on to agenda item number 6, review, discussion, and possible recommendation regarding 22-26 strategic plan objective 5.4 to redesign the board's members' ongoing procedures and orientation process to create effective board members. All right, Ms. Walker, it's yours.
I'm actually going to let Tammy Pitto take this one.
Okay. Well, Ms. Pitto, it is yours.
Good morning. Thank you. So this really is just a quick update regarding the strategic plan objective. During the October 4th, 2022 meeting, the committee discussed improvements to the onboarding process that included providing an initial meet and greet with the executive officer and board chair prior to an orientation, and also covering board member roles and responsibilities, board member functions with the executive officer and an existing board member and legal counsel. They also discussed assigning an existing board member to act as a mentor for the new board member and providing a comprehensive binder of materials on board functions, committees, and their roles, pertinent laws and regulations, chiropractic colleges, and other agencies and associations involved with the board. So based on the committee's feedback and discussion, staff drafted an updated onboarding and orientation process for the new board members that was reviewed by the committee and subsequently by the full board at its January 20th, 2023 meeting. Then at the June 16th, 2023 meeting, the committee discussed the proposed outline for the new board member orientation and provided feedback to staff. With the committee's input and recommendations, staff began working on developing an electronic board member resource shared folder and an updated resource binder. Staff continues to work on these items and plans to distribute them to all board members with the January 12th, 2024 board meeting materials. We've taken note about the rulemaking graphic that was just reviewed. I really don't have any other update on this item at this point, so I just want to turn it back over to the committee for any discussion or questions regarding this item.
Any questions, Mr. Sweet?
No, I'm glad to hear. I know this is something we've been talking about for a while now, so I appreciate your efforts to get this going, and I think it'll be helpful for folks as new people join.
Yeah, completely agree. One question would be around, in the last board meeting, the topic of emails came up, of setting up, is it, correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Walker, is it the DCA specific emails for board members?
Yeah, we're looking into being able, because I know some of the board members had expressed interest in having a DCA email, so we're looking to get that going here before the next meeting, and then we're looking for, well, we'll extend it to all board members if they want another email address to monitor, but we're debating between two platforms for being able to share the information. One platform is going to work better for people if we have a hybrid of DCA email accounts and external accounts. If everybody buys into wanting to be on the DCA network, then we have a different platform that we can use.
Oh, okay. And just some background in terms of kind of why I bring this up is that as part of, I would say, some discussion we had was there might be a kind of more ease of access to I would say any kind of board meeting committee materials, having access to, I would say, as access to the documents as they come in versus kind of having it all together at once. So that was definitely something kind of some of the board members expressed interest in. And so good. So I'm glad to see. I just wasn't sure if that's something that we would, is that a decision point in terms of what platform to go to, going to be made before the January meeting, or is that something to be discussed? Or
we actually plan to bring that to the board as a discussion the January meeting. As far as meeting materials, particularly for this upcoming meeting in January, our plan is to start actually releasing some of them to the board by the end of this week. Particularly, we've got some closed session items that are quite voluminous, so we'd like to get those out so people can begin their review. The platform we're planning to use is we're continuing to use Box. So we'll send out a box with some of those and continue to just add things on a flow basis between now and the publishing of the materials.
Perfect. And the reason I ask is because I wasn't sure if this is something, and maybe this is a kind of something to bring up in that meeting with the rest of the board, is if we would want it just to become a standard, right? If we go with that kind of approach of let's just have everyone have DCA emails, so that way it's for ease of access, ease of communication. It is another email for us to monitor. So I totally acknowledge that, but cool. I will reserve that question for next month. And I think that's all my questions. All right, let's go ahead and go to public comment.
We are taking public comment on agenda item 6. If you'd like to make a comment, raise that hand by tapping the hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial in users, dial *3 to raise a hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue with the agenda?
Yes, please. All right, agenda item number 7, public comment for items not on the agenda. It's open for public comment.
All right, we are open for items not on the agenda. If you'd like to make a comment on something not on the agenda, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial in users, dial *3 to raise a hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. As before, we're going to take just a few seconds to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue with the agenda?
Yes, please. All right, agenda item number 8, future agenda items. Is there anything, folks, Mr. Sweet, anything the committee is looking for a future agenda item?
Nothing from me. Thank you.
All right, and for me, nothing as well. I'm guessing public comment.
All right, if you have a suggestion for a future agenda item, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of your screen. Dial in users, dial *3 to raise a hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few more seconds to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue?
Yes, please. All right, agenda item number 6. I'm sorry, item number 6. This is item number 9. With the call adjournment of the meeting, it is what's it called? It is right now 12:02. We adjourned this meeting. Thank you, everyone, for your time and your effort.
Thank you, everyone. Good to see you.